Supposedly in the 1900s, the party switched, right? But what did not change is their love for immigration and how they have always prioritized that over the black community.
The Commission finds no national interest in continuing to import lesser skilled and unskilled workers.
Hello, I'm Andre Barnes. If you're hungry for more of the truth, then join us for the PB&J Hour. Peyton Jackson and I will discuss the news of the day, policy, and issues that affect your community. Hello, my name is Andre Barnes, and this is Policy Barnes and Jackson. This week, we're going to take you through the news of the day. A lot has happened this week, and what people are finding out is that President Donald J. Trump is not playing checkers or chess. He's playing Battleship. He's being attacked from multiple sides. He is showing peace through strength by not tolerating the shenanigans of the cartels. And he's having to deal with legal battles left and right, along with attacks from governors, mayors, mainly from the city of Chicago, but all across the country, in LA and California as well. So we're going to go over this, and I'm going to bring in my co-host, Peyton Jackson. How you doing, Peyton?
I am blessed and highly favored. How are you?
I'm doing well. And Peyton, this week, we're also going to find that we're going to push as a show, push past these narratives of they're here to make a better life. And we're going to discuss how their push for a better life is affecting Americans when they don't do it the right way. And we're going to hear some responses from some of those Americans that are experiencing turmoil through mass immigration. Immigration that is in large numbers affects our communities. And we're finding that to be the truth as we talk to and interview more people across the country. But Peyton, you've been dealing with a different thing in Texas with the quote unquote gerrymandering and the redistricting and the redrawing. Is there anything else that you'd like to discuss with that? Are there any new developments there?
Not really. Of course, the Democrats took it to court, but we're waiting. I hear we have a court date for the 3rd of October. So, as of right now, we're waiting for Democrats to, of course, pick their district, but also we're waiting to see if a judge will entertain something like this so close to an election.
Fantastic. We're going to be on pins and needles to see how the redistricting works out. This is going to be an interesting time because we're really going to see if these candidates that have been talking all this trash, not being effective for their constituents, have enough juice to come into a district where they have to compete when the district hasn't been drawn to their favor. Do they have the gusto to be able to compete at the level to gain new voters, but also to support their issues and to convince people how they're going to serve them? What are your thoughts about that? Do they have what it takes?
Absolutely not. They fled. They fled. All they had to do was exactly what you just said, knock on new doors. But instead, they threw a tantrum and they fled. And then they went on a long rant about how politicians shouldn't be able to pick their voters. Yet that's exactly what they're getting ready to do. But first, they have to put up some type of fight, at least in the court system. And I'm hoping that any sane judge will throw it out or prolong the process and just get the election over with. But nothing has really changed. No voters have lost any rights. It's just incumbents, lazy incumbents at that, are now a bit uncomfortable now because they have a little bit more competition, and that's okay. No need to run though.
Exactly. No one's going to get bitten, but
Right.
some people may
Well,
lose.
maybe.
Yeah. Speaking of getting bitten, President Trump has gotten two injunctions for two different situations. The first video that we're going to show you is essentially a judge decided to block the deportation of children back to their own home country. So we'll bring that up and discuss that now.
An appointed federal judge has thrown a wrench into the Trump administration's mass deportation efforts. This time, that judge blocking DHS from trying to deport hundreds of Guatemalan children yesterday. As you mentioned, some of those kids were sitting in planes on the tarmac in Texas when this order came down. It was from federal judge Sparkle Suknanan in Washington, D.C. Again, she is a Biden appointee. This happened after attorneys and advocates representing the Guatemalan children argued that the Trump administration was violating U.S. laws and potentially sending the kids to peril in their home countries without giving them due process. Now, the Trump administration countered that, saying they're reuniting the children with their parents or guardians in Guatemala who are all seeking their return, with a DOJ lawyer describing it as, quote, outrageous that the plaintiffs are, quote, trying to interfere with reunifications. Now, before issuing her order blocking the flights back to Guatemala, Judge Suknanan said in part, quote, I have the government attempting to remove minor children from the country in the wee hours of the morning on a holiday weekend, which is surprising, but here we are. I have conflicting narratives from both sides here. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller slammed the judge, posting on X in part, quote, the Biden judge is effectively kidnapping these migrant children and refusing to let them return home to their parents in their home country. The children have been in the care of HHS's Office of Refugee Resettlement, and Deputy AG Todd Blanche is sounding off on the judge's order.
What she said is that notwithstanding the work that the State Department have done and working with the Guatemalan government for over a month to identify children who were smuggled into this country away from their parents, who are now sitting in foster homes and orphanages around this country, to send them back to their parents in Guatemala, this judge said, nope, you cannot do it, in the middle of the night.
And that judge's order blocks DHS from removing any of these children while the legal fight plays out over the coming weeks. DOJ confirms they are complying with this order. This has to do with about 600 Guatemalan children. They crossed the southern border illegally as unaccompanied minors and are in the U.S. largely because of the work of human smugglers. We'll send it back to you.
Yeah, and Bill, this decision is just leaving a lot of people scratching their heads. Why wouldn't you want those children to go back to their parents? Bill Malugin, live for us in L.A. Bill, thanks. Molly?
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here.
Back in Texas when this order came down.
So, Peyton, they're not allowing these children to go back to their parents. And oftentimes, the first thing that they have to say about President Trump is that through the ICE raids, they're breaking up families. What are your thoughts about the reporting?
First, Tom Homan said we don't have to break up families. Everybody can go together. But that's not the issue in this case. This is reuniting families. And a judge just stopped that. Yeah, they were right. She's basically kidnapping these kids. Return them home. But Democrats aren't in the business of keeping up with kids. Didn't they lose like 300,000, 320,000?
They absolutely did. And my whole thing is our government is working with another government to safely get these children back to their homes and ultimately reunited with their parents. Why is that a bad thing? And I don't know how these judges just get the order. Like in the middle of the night, she's going to send an order to stop the deportations. I just wonder how they're notified that this stuff is happening. So it's an interesting dynamic where we constantly see all of these resistance moves, all of these shots toward President Donald Trump. Here's another video that we'll discuss.
Loss for the Trump administration. A federal judge says President Trump's use of the National Guard in Los Angeles was illegal. The judge ruling the deployment violates the Posse Comitatus Act, and he warns President Trump's calls to send troops into other American cities would amount to a national police force with the president as its chief. Before this ruling, Trump teased that Chicago is next on his list for troops. The administration is already planning to surge federal resources for immigration arrests there. Chicago's mayor has taken preemptive steps to try and rein in any federal action President Trump takes. For more on all of this, we are joined by NBC's senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley and immigration attorney Alan Orr. So, Julia, what else are we hearing from this judge? How big of a deal is this ruling?
It's a big ruling when you think about how Trump wants to use the National Guard next. He's already toyed with the idea of possibly sending them to Chicago, something that leaders in that state of Illinois have pushed back on, as well as the mayor of Chicago. And this is also something that we've seen in D.C., although he did have more authority. He has authority over the D.C. National Guard because of its position as the capital city. But since Trump started deploying the National Guard in L.A., which he said was to quell unrest after protests there that started because of ICE arrest, there's been a question about whether or not the president has the authority to call in the state's National Guard. Governor Gavin Newsom said he did not, and whether or not how long he can keep them there and what kind of duties they can be performing. It is against this law known as Posse Comitatus, a late 1800s law that said that the military cannot be used to enforce domestic law. It's the same reason why military can't be arresting immigrants when they cross the border. That would be enforcing a domestic law within the borders of the United States. And so in this case, this judge is saying that this was a violation to send National Guard to California. And so now that will be a big question going forward for the Trump administration. Do they continue to push? We've seen them push back court orders in the past. They will likely appeal this. And will they then decide that there is some other justification for sending National Guard to Chicago? One last thing, Anna, what was already so unusual about the idea of sending the National Guard to Chicago is they said they were doing it to crack down on crime there. That's really going a step further than what they did in Los Angeles, where they said it was to respond to unrest. The National Guard has been used in the past.
So, Peyton, we've heard their explanation of what's going on. And I think that we both have an understanding that due to our laws, that our president is going to have to move carefully. But do you see how they're injecting a lot of doubt in his ability to be able to go into these Democrat cities and really put in order through utilizing the troops? What are your thoughts about this reporting?
Saving the day. He has to be careful with saving the day because of idiot, low IQ mayors and governors. Like I said last week, Chicago has always been Chirac to me. So why stand up as a mayor, as a governor, and say, no, we don't need help? 58, I believe, 58 people in Chicago were just shot over the weekend. And if you ask me, that's pretty normal for Chicago, isn't it?
That's really normal. That is normal. Now, what they're finding, and some of this is through changes in the law, changes in how they enforce the law. They've seen a slight decline in murders. They've worked with the ATF in order to get some guns off the street. However, I do think that a lot of these cities that have had issues with crimes for decades, they are having a little bit of a performance issue. And our president is about results. So he's not going to allow people to be ineffective and continue to get government funds. And I think this is where a lot of them are getting upset.
Yeah. But here's the thing, there's no need to wait on Trump. You can actually just stand up and do the job that you campaigned for.
Yep.
You didn't just get in this seat. You've been here. So there's no need to wait on Trump. The best way to beat Trump is to beat him to the job. Don't give him something to do in your city or your state. But there's absolutely no reason to push back when you have failed at protecting your state or your city.
Absolutely. And that actually brings us to our next segment, Chicago is Burning. And we've heard all the doom and gloom from some of the Democrat mayors across the country, Baltimore. We've heard it from Chicago. We've heard it from LA. We've heard it all year about every single thing that Trump is doing. But right now, with troops being possibly deployed in the next day, weeks, no matter what time it is, people are getting anxious. They're putting their chest out. They're making speeches. And I just really wanted to share with our viewers the type of things that they're saying and just break it all down for them. We'll start with this one.
Department had a fighting chance, we could end gun violence in Chicago. But as long as this president allows hundreds of thousands of guns to come into our city, we will always be fighting an uphill battle. And so our call to the president and to his fellow Republicans who want to weaponize the tragedy of gun violence, the Republicans who want to use the pain of families who have lost loved ones to shootings, and who want to use our city as a punching bag. Our response is that they should get their own house in order before they say anything about the city of Chicago. We have done tremendous work with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. On August 4th, ATF worked with the Chicago Police Department to take 171 guns off the streets in just one action. They took 64 machine gun switches. These are devices that turn guns into automatic weapons, and they are almost always found on the scene of mass shootings in our city. These guns are linked to shootings and homicides in Chicago, going all the way back to 2017, including the killing of a 14-year-old boy. So my question is, why did Trump cut $468 million from ATF's budget in his nasty signature bill? Why did he cut funding for the agency responsible for getting guns off our streets by almost 30%? Why did he cut 1,465 positions from an agency that is so critical to reducing gun violence? They cut funding from the agency that is actually stopping gun traffickers so they could increase funding for ICE and Border Patrol. I'm going to repeat that again so that it sinks in. Trump gutted the agency that actually catches gun traffickers just so that he could hand money to ICE and Border Patrol. This president doesn't care about gun violence. He just wants his own secret police force that will do publicity stunts whenever his poll numbers are sinking, whenever his jobs report shows a stagnating economy, whenever he needs another distraction from his failures. That's what this is about.
Shots fired. What are your thoughts about that, Peyton?
There are no shots fired. Him, out of all people, wanting control of something, you want gun control, but you don't want border control.
Yep.
I said it once and I said it again. You want gun control, but you don't want border control. You took care of those illegals like they were your best friend, and that was your first time meeting them, and put them over your own people. Yep. You really don't think not one person brought a gun illegally into this country? Actually, wasn't it Illinois that had a black judge that granted an illegal immigrant the Second Amendment? What didn't that happen in Illinois?
I think that was Illinois.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So
I think that was Illinois. And here's the thing. Here's where I'm saying like the shots are fired, because as Trump being a Republican is shrinking the government, he is shrinking areas of the government that haven't been effective. We've seen him shrink the Department of Education. We've seen him get rid of a lot of jobs, which has affected some Americans that have been laid off. But there's always the pendulum swing when you have administration to administration with different philosophies. The previous Biden administration was all about large government. So they expanded everything. They opened up all these DEI programs. And now we're seeing the shrinking of all that, the reversal of all that. And now we are experiencing the balancing of the books. We can't have organizations that are ineffective be so large and ineffective and not help citizens. him saying that he's drawing out money out of the ATF because he wants to grow ICE. Our border has been an immediate problem. ATF maybe not, they may not be doing their job as well, and he's moving things around and he's shrinking the government. So as we see these changes, we have to look at the results. We can't just take his word or look at the blank numbers, because they don't always tell the story.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Especially not the media.
exactly. We're gonna hear more lies from the former governor Lori Lightfoot.
Oh, gotta love her.
I was tripping the other day because someone referred to her as Beetlejuice. I was like, I can't.
No, you want to know my nickname?
President of the
What?
United States about
My
this. What do you
nickname for
say
her is
to
Big
residents
Soup.
of Chicago who
Oh.
may be concerned about it?
This is about two things. It's about power and it's about money. He wants to exercise his power. He wants to scare the heck out of immigrant communities, and he wants to use the pretext of the National Guard or the military coming in to Chicago to boost up the ICE numbers. But one thing I want to be clear about, we got a ruling today in San Francisco from a federal judge that said the pretense of sending in the troops into LA was just that. And we had lawyers defending that administration that clearly put on perjured testimony about the farce and the factual basis for doing it. If he comes to Chicago, he's going to be in court, and he's going to be sued by the state, he's going to be sued by the city, and I believe that there will be private interests that also sue him. This is not about violent crime, and I don't think we should pretend that this manufactured crisis and his attempt to provoke people in Chicago is legitimate exercise of power. It is not. Coming into Chicago with troops would violate the Posse Comitatus Act, and he would find the same result as he did in LA and in California. If he really cared about violent crime, go after the gun manufacturers who are just mass producing these weapons and have no liability or accountability. Go after the gun stores that know that they're selling to straw purchasers that flood into our city. Pass common sense gun reform that we have been begging for decades. Those are the kinds of things that actually would make a meaningful difference in violent crime. He's not talking about any of those things. He will not do any of those things because this is not about violent crime. It's about something else.
Before I let you go, Madam Mayor, I know we've obviously taken up quite a bit of your time as we watched that press conference together. But I think I would just ask you, take your point that for the president, you believe he has many other reasons here for doing what he's doing. The crime rate in Chicago remains what it is. The crime rate here in Washington, D.C. remained what it is. What is the answer to getting that crime? Why can't local officials get that crime rate down? Do you need more cops on the streets?
Listen, the crime rate has gone down. You heard the numbers of decreases in homicides and shootings and other violent crimes that have gone down and have been going down for the last 4 years. We can't ignore that because the president is making up his own fact. And we also know there are red cities in red states that have higher per capita rates of gun violence and other violent crime that we're not hearing coming out of the president's mouth as the places where he really wants to go. So I just will not play this game. This is about violent crime. What do communities need? We need to stop the flow of illegal guns. Mayor Johnson was 100% right about that. You don't gut the ATF, which is, by the way, really small to begin with. You should increase and expand.
Peyton, I can't. I was going to let that play to the end, but they want to get illegal guns off the street, but they're not interested in dealing with illegal aliens. She also said something interesting in the beginning. She talked about Donald Trump scaring the immigrant community. Why should they be scared? Why should they be scared if they're doing the right thing? If they're here legally, they shouldn't be scared. But he's coming in with soldiers. He can't do this legally. And they keep going back to the guns. And the last thing I'd like to say about the guns is in DC, in less than a month, they've collected 1,800 illegal guns. So could you imagine how many illegal guns that they would get off the street if they were willing to collaborate with President Trump instead of resisting him? What are your thoughts about that video that we just saw?
They complain about the crime, but then when you offer more police, they circle it back to Trump. Do you want help or do you not want the help? One. But two, and lastly, you definitely should not have told me about that Beetle comment right before looking at her. I feel like that was a setup because I was laughing the entire time. I couldn't hold it in. I'm sorry. That's exactly
I,
what she looks like. I was like, oh, I could not stop laughing.
I was thinking
I'm
to
sorry.
myself, why does she look so familiar? And then I saw it on social media and I was like, I couldn't unsee it. But yeah,
You definitely set me up because I could not stop laughing. That's hilarious. That's exactly what she looks like.
but we
Sorry.
still have to have fun on this show because as much
Yes,
information as we're giving people, we want to have
we
fun.
have to laugh.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
have to have our times of banner. So what she really wants is for the president and the federal government to stay out of their business because
Mhm.
they're not willing to solve the problem in a way that will have immediate results. And we're going to see in this next video what their vision is and how it's different than some of the techniques the president would take.
As he floats the idea of sending the National Guard into Chicago.
Good morning. First of all, a military occupation of the city of Chicago would not only be illegal, but unconstitutional and costly. The city of Chicago is not requesting that federal troops come and occupy our city. In fact, I have not heard any mayor across this country call for American troops to come and occupy our cities. Look, we're working hard every single day to drive violence down in the city of Chicago. Since I've been in office, there's been a precipitous decline in violent crime in every single category. Just this year alone, we have a 32% reduction in homicides, almost 40% reduction in shootings and shooting victims. Robberies are down nearly 35%. Carjackings are down nearly 50%. If this president was actually serious about driving violence down in the city of Chicago and American cities across this country, he would work with mayors to make sure that we have the necessary investments to continue to do the work that we have been doing.
You've led me to my next question, Mr. Mayor, which is, if not for these troops coming into Chicago, what would a productive relationship with the Trump administration look like? If they were serious about fighting crime in the streets of Chicago, what could they offer you that would be helpful?
Yeah, it's an excellent.
And Peyton, you've seen that I've used purposely clips from ABC, CNN, and other places, NBC, because I want people to hear what's being said and how they're framing their narrative. Like I hear you like groaning in the background. What are you?
I'm sorry.
No, that's
I'm
fine.
sorry.
No, I want our viewers to hear it because of course we're going to come with a different opinion and I want them to get our perspective in real time. What were you reacting to?
He said the word investment. He wants Trump to partner with him to see what investments we can bring to Chicago. Didn't he just spend taxpayer money and go overseas to bring more businesses into Chicago? And they called him out for that. You don't need Trump to show you how to do your job. And then when it offers to come in to show you how to do your job, you're complaining that he's not doing it your way. If crime was down 100%, Trump wouldn't even be worried about Chicago. He has bigger things on his plate. I really cannot stand Black politicians, mainly Democrats. I really cannot stand them. But I'm sorry.
No,
I digress.
no apologies whatsoever because on Policy Barnes and Jackson, we want to get real reactions in real time. And that's why when I bring up these videos, I won't often show you because I want to get your full reaction so people can see it. We can talk about it, and then people can understand why our perspectives are different. Let's continue with the video.
Question. First of all, he could start by restoring the over $800 million that was taken away from violence prevention efforts back in April. Look, when I first became mayor of the city of Chicago, I made multiple requests to the previous administration to invest in violence prevention. That request remains. But these are also requests that I know that are being made in Baltimore by Brandon Scott, who's doing an incredible job. Barbara Lee in Oakland, who's doing an amazing job. Karen Bass in Los Angeles. Many mayors across this country. Randall Woodfin in Birmingham, Alabama. You are seeing declines that we have not seen in a generation.
And I got to bring us back again because you mentioned that he said investment, and he mentions a very specific investment. He got rejected by the previous administration that they weren't going to give him any more money for these feckless programs that he was going to utilize to deal with lowering crime. And he goes on to say that other mayors asked for the same amount. So in the previous administration, they're all asking for all this money. They're getting COVID money. They're getting money from the illegal immigrant crisis. And then they're going to say, now we also need money to deal with our crime issue. Call me a conspiracy theorist if you want, Peyton, but I just feel like all these mayors that he mentioned, Mayor Scott, Mayor Barbara Lee, Mayor Bass, they all get on a Zoom and they're just like, what's going to be our talking point and how much money are we going to ask for the government from the government this week? If I'm wrong, what are your thoughts? That's what just tipped me off. I was just like, why are they specifically asking for that number?
I think Democrats do that in general. I've been watching a few interviews here in Texas by a few politician leaders, and they always seem to have a few of the same verbiage or talking points when they're speaking, especially when it comes to the map. But in general, generally speaking, in these interviews, they sound a lot of the same. But going back to what you mentioned, these programs, in my opinion, they don't work. Because when you talk to the Democrats about violence, gun violence, especially when it comes to Black on Black crime, they always point towards the poverty route. I've been broke all my life. I have yet to shoot anyone, especially anyone innocent. And we have to address it at some point in time. It can't be both poverty and give me a handout to a nonprofit that's doing minimal work. If poverty is truly the answer, which I don't think it is, but if it's truly the answer, why not go into these areas that are underserved and show them how to generate income outside of social services? Actually break away from that system.
Absolutely, Peyton. I think you've hit it spot on. And part of the reason they don't want to do that, Peyton, is because they want people to be dependent on them. If they solve the crime problem, then people wouldn't need them to keep them in these social services that deal with crime. They wouldn't be able to open up all these nonprofit organizations and mismanage the money or lose the money or not effectively use the money. And you see the same thing in this homeless industrial complex. They keep asking for more money to deal with homelessness. If you look at LA, they have a huge problem there. All this money comes in for that from all these nonprofit and government organization, and no one is getting help. There are all these places that have open air drug places where people are doing drugs and committing crimes. And you have families that are trying to take their kids to school and they're having to deal with these criminal vagrants that aren't being held accountable in any way. So our president wants to start dealing with these things, but it is a pattern that you're seeing across all these Democrat-led cities. And all these different mayors are saying the same thing and doing the same thing. Let's listen to the rest of what he had to say.
In fact, just the month of April this year, 2025, it was the safest April since 1962. Our work is working. This president and the federal government has a responsibility to ensure that cities have the resources that they need in order to continue to drive violence down across this country.
And what programs would you want funded? What specifically do you consider to be violence prevention programs?
Million be used for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have been working with community violence intervention workers, or CVI. These are community-led organizations that are spending time on the ground in the neighborhoods, working to squash conflict, to prevent retaliation from occurring. I'm likely the first mayor in the history of Chicago to wake up in one of the most difficult, challenging communities. And that's why not only are we investing in CVI, or our community violence intervention workers, we're also investing in youth employment. This summer alone, we hired 31,119 young people. And in the neighborhoods where youth employment was the highest.
Okay, so it seems his community enforcement volunteer workers would work in a situation where they also had a viable, fully stocked police force. But what I'm stopping us for is his program where he's giving young people jobs. Because I'm not sure, Peyton, who the jobs are going to. Are they going to illegal immigrants? Why aren't they going to some of these teens that we see in the teen takeovers twerking in front of a McDonald's and jumping on people's cars? How come they're not seeing jobs go to some of these kids that are committing crimes? Who are these kids? If they're A students, that's great that you have A students, but you need to start getting some of these students that are in a situation where they need motivation, they need help. What are your thoughts about what he's saying? Because it just doesn't add up to me.
My thoughts are plenty of mayors across the nation, he hired or contracted or gave grants out to middlemen instead of him going out, knocking on doors, building relationships, and squashing the beef that he mentioned, because that's basically all that they're doing, and being active in his community. They hired a bunch of lazy nonprofits to do the middleman work. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think it's a waste of money. Again, if poverty is truly the root cause to violence, gun violence, especially in the Black community, Black, brown, white, yellow, purple community, then why not address the root cause? But I think every major city has have these violence prevention programs. Unneeded, not needed. It's just a waste of money. I think we really need to dig into the root cause of the violence, because you don't need another grown man to tell you not to throw your whole life away because of beef. And
That's
9 times out of 10, the beef is not even substantial. You are beefing over a block that you don't own. It is stupidity, pure stupidity. All these kids need is redirection. And any 30, 40-year-old that's a part of a gang just needs to go to jail, prison, because you can't redirect them. You can, but they just need to go and sit down for a little bit. But when it comes to the youth, we definitely need to redirect them. And it's not with a prevention program. We need to get them educated into something different in school. Just redirect them.
Absolutely. Let's listen to more.
We saw the most significant decline in violence. He also can help support mental and behavioral health care services. I've reopened the 3 mental health clinics. We've expanded mental health crises workers all over the city so that when mental health crises occurs, a police officer doesn't have to show up to that scene. But we have a trained professional to be able to address these crises. The other thing that he can help us with is the federal government can help us with. I've revamped the entire Detectives Bureau within the city of Chicago. And now we have a clearance rate almost 77%. One of the deterrents of crime is to actually solve it, to bring closure, to bring justice.
So let me ask you, Mr. Mayor, those all sound like great programs. I'm curious, would you also like to get federal funding to help put 5,000 more cops on the street in Chicago? Would that help drive down crime?
Look, policing by itself is not the full strategy.
No, I understand that. You've talked about the other things you want, and I said those are good and important programs, but I'm asking also, would 5,000 more police officers on the street in Chicago be helpful to go along with all of those social programs that a lot of cities are engaging in and having success with?
Now we see he didn't want to answer that question. And I actually saw a interview with Byron Donalds, and he said he went to Chicago and he talked to some people. And what he learned was that they are down 2,000 police officers. So, Peyton, what I want to present to our viewers is that Chicago is in the red. They have a budget issue, and having 2,000 less police officers than you need builds overtime, because you have to have the police go out there sometimes. And they're going to need to do overtime in order to get that done. And overtime depletes the budget. So what I'm thinking is that if they weren't in such a resist mode, that they would at least allow Trump to come in with the National Guard for 30 days to bolster their police department so they could, I don't know, save money, work towards getting more of a balanced budget. It just makes sense to me, and it just doesn't seem that common sense ideas are something that is their strong suit. And I'm talking about all these governors and mayors that have these cities that have these decades long crime problems. So this is my suggestion to them, and I hope they hear our show. I hope that they watch our show, because I hope that they will take some of this advice and apply it. Because we've seen with Muriel Bowser that even though in her situation she had to comply because the president has a different role in the nation's capital, she has come and said that what he's done is effective. What are your thoughts about what he said and some of the things that I've been saying?
You're expecting Democrats to have common sense, one. And then you're expecting them to have common courtesy, two. Of course, it would save them money. And I didn't know that they were that far in the red, but of course, it would save them money by not having to have as many officers working overtime since they are in a deficit with the labor, but they have TDS. It doesn't matter what Trump does, he is always going to be the enemy. It doesn't matter how much he is trying to help Chicago or Illinois or Cali or LA, anywhere that help is hell bent on hating him, they're not going to give him his credit.
Absolutely. And I think you're spot on with that reporting. I do hope that they're able to work something out, because the fighting in public is not helping anybody and nothing is getting done. The only thing that's continuing is Chicago's dependence on them for social services, for crime prevention, because they're not getting the job done. Hopefully, the president will convince them to take some steps further to do some things on their own. Now, Peyton, I wanted to shift for a second, because I get bombarded each week with messaging about the plight of illegal immigrants and the fear. And I can only imagine people that have not been trained in understanding the history of immigration, people that have been used to living with people that don't have status in the United States. It just becomes normalized to them. And they're just like, what is the real problem? And I don't think that when people talk about our immigration issue, that they look at how it affects Americans. Not everything that is happening with the resentment of Americans about mass immigration is racist. It's not a resentment towards immigrants. It is a resentment towards the policies that allow these immigrants to get favor over Americans. And I'm just going to show you some videos that really highlight how Americans are pushing back against that narrative that there should be some sort of pedestal that we put towards people that are here with no status. So I'm going to start with this video here. And this video, before I turn it on, Anton, and I don't have his last name, but he is a very popular social media influencer. He talks a lot about relationships and a lot of different topics. And I usually don't bring other influencers, but I just thought that he dealt really well with this discussion around entitlement and how people think that our immigration program, as Barbara Jordan says, is a right and not a privilege. But Barbara Jordan says it is a privilege for you to be able to immigrate into this country.
Yes, I second that.
And when he was deported, he was given a 10-year ban. He completed his...
So here we go.
My husband was deported. And when he was deported, he was given a 10-year ban. He completed his 10-year ban in June of 2018, where we began his process. We submitted the required form, which is the I-130 at the time. It took about a year to get the approval. We submitted his NBC visa application in August 2019. We then were delayed because we needed a document that we can only get from the USCIS, which was the FOIA request. That was done in November 2019. June 2021 is when he finally got his visa appointment, which to our surprise, it was rejected. It was rejected because they said that he needed a pardon, which was the I-601 waiver. It took us about 4 months to collect all the documents in order to submit the pardon, which is the I-601, along with the money that we needed to submit. Again, we did not go with the lawyer because we could not afford it and we weren't going to save up our money for many years when we've been waiting for this for so long. In January 2023, I submitted an inquiry at the White House. I don't know if this helped the process, but it did. In April 2023, we did receive a notification that my husband's green card was approved. And when he went to his appointment at the Mexican consulate, the U.S. consulate in Mexico, he was told that he did not need the I-601 waiver. Now, if you are on those comments, and I'm not going to get emotional because you do not deserve my tears, but if you are in those comments screaming, do it the right way, you are talking about years of doing it the right way.
Now, I'm not the sharpest knife in the tool shed, and so you guys can keep me accountable for this. And again, I'm open to the possibility of being wrong because this is an educational process. I've never been deported because I was born here in the United States of America. My father was born here, my grandfather was born here, so on and so forth. Rock with me here. She started off the process by saying that her husband had got deported, which means that he was here illegally or he was doing something in addition to coming over here illegally. The sense of entitlement is the thing that really gets to me. I don't understand how you think that you can do something illegal because you can't get away with this in any other place in the world. No place in the world.
Peyton, I just want to deal with that real quick because it's one thing when we're saying it, because we're always saying it. But when other people are saying it and they're breaking it down to this degree, this is what I want other people to hear. Some of the 98% that voted for Kamala Harris, even though the immigration policies did not really help with your situation. And even with some of the crime policies and other policies around health, didn't help your situation, you decided to vote blue no matter who. But here we're looking at the policy. Here we're looking at the entitlement. And to hear this narrative, I think is very different than the narrative that we usually hear.
The only right that you should have after breaking into this country is the right to remain silent. Instead of a 10-year ban, it should have been a lifetime ban. Why did you do it the wrong way the first time? And then you complain about the process afterward? He should have got a lifetime ban. But here's the thing. They didn't have to be separated. Why couldn't she have went back to wherever he was deported to? You love him that much, follow him back, and you wait with him.
Yeah, she's a grown woman. They didn't have any kids at the time, which she'll really break down later. But she could have gone with him and stayed with him. She was just like, oh, you're breaking up the breadwinner of the household. You guys could have started a new life across the border, and you knew the consequences. You knew what could happen if he got caught. And here's the thing. I think that people think that if they get across the border and they don't get caught, then there are no consequences. They're safe.
Yeah.
But they're not safe, and they're not safe anymore. I want to continue that video because she goes on another level here.
Okay.
Allows for you to just come over, do what you want to do, and then feel a sense of entitlement to where you then deserve the American dream because you just been here long enough to be able to grow into it. That's not how life works. Now, in this situation, based off of what she's explaining, she's blessed because this administration or the previous administration granted her the ability to still be able to do it the right way because you were deported during the first Trump administration. You then went through the process, and I don't know if he came back prior to or what was going on, but I'm assuming that he did it the right way because he learned his lesson during the first administration, right? He goes through the process, which takes years, that he should have done in the first place. He then gets his green card, but you're still sitting here operating and talking like you hold a sense of entitlement and we don't deserve your tears. No, I'm not even really sure that you're appreciative of the fact that the American dream was still available to somebody who broke the law and came over here illegally in the first place. And this is one of the reasons why you got to have a reset on everything because everybody is entitled. Everybody can do what they want to do. You know what I'm saying? If your country was so great, then you would have made it great on your own in the first place. I don't like this. I don't like this sense of entitlement and attitude that people got, and they want to get snarky and turn their nose up. You're blessed to be here in a country that other people helped build. You came over and benefited from it, or at least he came over and benefited from it. I don't like this sense of entitlement attitude that people be having. These people be a mess, bro. Let me hear the rest of this story. I don't know where she's going with this.
Now, if you are praising the fact that these families are getting deported, it's disgusting, it's sad, it's heart-wrenching, and please don't forget the fact that parts of the United States were Mexico. And it's sad to say that unfortunately, where these things are happening are places that once were Mexico. So think about that. Think about the foundations of your homes.
I think that these people need to go back to their homes and make it great again. If you love it so much, then go back over there and then make it great and then tell us what it's like on TikTok.
The food that is on your table. Think about your nannies. I saw so many nannies in the fires carrying pets, carrying children, and I know those weren't their kids. You can clearly tell the difference between a nanny and a parent.
Peyton, I think we're going to stop there because I think that our viewers are going to get it. She started talking about the history of the country and really misconstruing it. And you live in that part of the country, and I know you probably heard that argument before that this used to be Mexico. What is your response to that?
It used to be. Remember the Alamo, baby? It used to be. Y'all lost. Ironically, they were fighting over the whole states' rights thing, but it used to be. It used to be. But a war that was lost long ago doesn't mean that you trespass into an entire country and then get mad when you get deported and then have the audacity to get offended at a long wait time. It should have been a lifetime ban. Again, we have to communicate that this is non-negotiable issue, not just with American citizens, but the whole world needs to know that you don't break into America. You wouldn't break into China, right? I hope not. But you shouldn't want to be or inclined to break into any country. But if that's the decision that you deem is appropriate, then you better prepare yourself to what comes afterwards.
Exactly. The consequences are not always easy. All right, a few more.
Trump is clearing out a lot of that Section 8 fraud. It was fraud for illegal immigrants. And as a woman that grew up in Southern California, I saw exactly how they did it and what they did and how they were able to get away with it for so long. So how they would do it is when you fill out these applications, there is a box that asks you, now they'll initially ask you for your social security number and date of birth, whatever. But there's a box that said, check here if you do not have a social security number. Once you check that box, baby, you're a celebrity after that. Now, this isn't just for Hispanics because we know illegal immigrants come in from all cultures, but the border is right there. Hello. So the women and children would come over and they'll apply to all this aid. They'll check that box, do not have a social security number. And then they will get immediate assistance. They'll get the Section 8. They'll get cash assistance. They'll get EBT. They'll get free lunch for the kids. They'll get ESL. They'll get free tutoring. They'll get everything they need because they're not a citizen, so they need the emergency help. But here's what they would do. The men would be there too. They just wouldn't include them on any paperwork. The men would be in the home, but the men would go to work. All while they women and children are getting all this free everything, they would go to work. They would do construction, get paid under the table. Odd jobs, handyman work, paid under the table. Fix cars, paid under the table. Have a food stand or food truck, cash only. Okay, selling whatever they can sell, reselling, doing whatever they can, all under the table. And the women would do it too. So they getting all.
It's all under the table. And I'm sure I saw you react to like part of the video. What were you reacting to?
Now I understand why I was gotta go to the ATM to get cash. I had a blowout. No, I had a blowout while I was out knocking on doors the other day, and he just so happened to be Hispanic, but he ran a business, but it was cash only. I was like,
Yep.
oh, did I just pay somebody under the table? But I run into that a lot, even in the Black community, because I just thought that it was an ignorance, and it still may just be an ignorance to how to set up merchant services for whatever business, but I may have just paid somebody under the table. My bad, guys. I needed a new tire.
Yeah, but like in a lot of the places, it's like a cashless, it's like a cardless society where it's just
Yeah.
cash only, and cash is king in some of those situations. So sometimes there's nothing you can do, especially if you're stranded. You just
I
got to
was
do.
stranded. I was stranded.
That's right.
Yeah, but he took care of me. Shout out to
Yep.
him. I won't call
Hmm.
out his name now, but shout out to him.
Yeah, I think they do good work. All right, here's another perspective also about the healthcare industry.
Okay.
Lost my job of 10 years with no notice, no severance, no nothing, and haven't found a job yet. So I've decided to call and try to follow up on my health insurance application through the state. And they told me they are still processing it, but it will be declined. And I said, why would it be declined? I don't have an income. According to them, even though I make no money from unemployment, I make too much from unemployment to get insurance. I said, okay, so what do we do now? So I have to wait for them to process the application, to deny my application, to send it to Marketplace, for them to receive the application, for them to let me know. So I'm like, okay, let me go on Marketplace. On Marketplace, I'm denied health insurance. Why? I have no idea. They said I have to go through the state. So illegals can come in and they get everything for free, everything for free. But me, a tax-paying, born and raised American citizen, can't get health insurance.
Yes. And that is exactly what happens. And a lot of times, Peyton, a lot of people aren't discussing how Americans are affected, how sometimes these illegal aliens are giving a lot of preference and privileges. Number one, that they didn't earn, and number two, that's on the taxpayer's dime. So this anger from the fraud and the abuse is not talked about enough. And I just wanted to make sure that we shared with our viewers, not everybody is sympathetic to the plight of everyone that's coming over the border. Not everyone is coming across the border with good intentions. Not everyone is coming across the border fleeing persecution. Not everyone that is coming across the border is destitute or fleeing their government. Some of them are just looking for work. And a lot of them will work here for a period of time, go back to their country and make bank after utilizing all of the benefits that we have on our tax dollars. What did you think about that video?
In my city, in my metroplex, Tarrant County just had a housing wait list of, I believe, 15 years. Now I believe it's down to 8 years. And the city of Fort Worth, or I'm sorry, this county of Dallas County has a closed wait list. So it's not just insurance, it's even housing. Really, all of our resources are streamlined for people who broke the law to get into our country. We have a housing wait list for Americans, but not one for illegal immigrants. So it's not just insurance, but it sounds like people are waking up to just how much mass immigration affects Americans. Again, it is not just the whole black jobs thing. It's American jobs, American housing, American resources, the social services that we're supposed to be able to access when we absolutely need them. They're streamlined for people who broke into this country, and we have nobody to blame but Democrats.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to not change pace because this is another group that is bringing some grievances, but it is highlighting some of the issues that people in Chicago are dealing with around immigration. So I have a PowerPoint, and this PowerPoint is directly from Chicago Flip Red. And I just wanted to highlight their position. One of the things that they're saying is they want to end the sanctuary city scam. And illegal immigration has done a few things. It has drained our schools, housing, hospital, and jobs. And I think that when people are talking about mass immigration, they don't really deal with these issues. They look at these people that are coming across the border and they're just like, oh, some of them are unaccompanied minors. Some of them are fleeing disasters. Some of them are doing this and that, but they're not looking at how it affects Americans. And our schools are suffering. And as great a country America is, our primary and secondary schools are lacking. They are overcrowded, and our students are underperforming in mathematics and science. And then you have people that will continue to push for these H-1B visas, these STEM visas, and all these programs that attract foreign students to fill these jobs that they have normalized that aren't jobs that Americans can do. They put a label on foreign students that they are smarter than American students. And I don't think that's the deal. I think we've disinvested in our schools and it has caused this problem. The next thing that they say they want to do is they want to protect Black families first. We will not sit by while our communities are destabilized for political points. And we're dealing with the Black community because the illegal immigrants that were bused to cities across the countries, they didn't go to the suburbs. They went to Black communities. So their communities are being destabilized. They're dealing with crime. They're dealing with gang violence. They're dealing with a lot of different things. So they're calling for the president to send support because they feel that Mayor Brandon Johnson has not done his part. And they go on to say that Mayor Johnson is more worried about illegal immigrants than the safety of Chicagoans. His executive order, because he wrote out an executive order that the city of Chicago was not going to work with ICE. They were not going to work with the Army, the National Guard. And they believe it's a political stunt meant to inflame fear. And this is what the mayors across the country were talking about. This was what former Mayor Lightfoot was saying, that he wants to scare the heck out of the immigrant community, that all this fear was happening. And then they continue to say that Chicago is drowning under cartel-driven drug trafficking, rising violence, and the chaos that comes from sanctuary city policies. Who else is talking about this? Like, Peyton, I'm going to bring this back up. Because I don't think that people are talking about these issues. And when I keep hearing these sympathetic sob stories about people getting deported after 10, 15, 20, 30 years, people that are getting pulled out of schools, people that are getting pulled while they're going to do their check-ins. You are not a citizen. And we are destabilizing American citizens. And for some reason, the poor people in America are disregarded by our own citizens for people that are coming from other places that they deem to be more poor and more deserving. What are your thoughts about this? Because I dropped a lot there.
I second that. No, what you said was absolutely right. The American citizen, the American people are completely disregarded, and all of these social services, every part of the American dream has been stripped due to illegal immigrants and Democrats. Perpetual was right. It's time that we stop the assembly line. It's time that we stop the birthright citizenship. It's time that we stop the lottery system. It's time that we stop visas. I went to Irvin, which is a part of my new district, ran into a bunch of visa holders. And I had a similar issue last year with a neighborhood called Soft Poly. It used to be predominantly Black. Now it's predominantly Hispanic, but these Hispanic members can't vote. And I go to Irving the other day and I ran into a bunch of visa holders. They're not Hispanic, I believe they were Indian.
Okay.
Again, the entire neighborhood, darn near, cannot vote. And these are some nice houses. They're doing well for some people who cannot vote. And it was completely like a 180 in comparison to where I've been, because usually I've spent a lot of time in the hood trying to flip votes. But it goes from seeing low income housing, seeing immigrants take over low income housing and apartments, and then middle class housing is being taken over by residents or illegals. But to go to a well off area to see these two-story houses. They weren't mansions, but they weren't too far from it. And the majority, and 99% of this neighborhood cannot vote. It's not just the jobs that they're taking, it's the housing as well. And just being over there, it made Section 8 waiting list look bottom of the barrel.
Wow.
We definitely need to put a halt on immigration as a whole, if you ask me. It's just have to start prioritizing the American people. If we can't let the American dream be hijacked.
That's right. 100%. Peyton, we're going to switch gears again because, as you're well aware, there is a ship, an American ship that is off the coast of Venezuela. The
Yeah.
president is not playing any games with the government of Venezuela as far as dealing with the cartel and Tren de Agua. So he has had a response. I want to talk to you about it. But a lot of times people want to show you the reactions. I want to do something different. I'm not going to have the famous shot that the shot seen around the world. I'm going to have more of an explanation about what the president's doing and why.
nations and many nations in
1 second.
have applauded the administration's counter-drug operations and efforts, and the president is prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice. The Maduro regime is not the legitimate government of Venezuela. It is a narco-terror cartel. Maduro is not a legitimate president. He is a fugitive head of this drug cartel. He has been indicted in the United States for trafficking drugs into our country, and it is the utmost responsibility of this president and this administration to prevent the illicit flow of drugs into our country.
The military deployment that President Trump has sent to the Caribbean Sea close to the shores with Venezuela is massive. It's much more that is needed to simply counter narcotics operations. Is President Trump considering launching military strikes to military installments or facilities in Venezuelan soil?
I won't get ahead of the president with respect to any military action or questions about that ever. But what I will tell you is that many Caribbean nations and many nations in the region have applauded the administration's counter-drug operations and efforts, and the president is prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice. And as I've said from this podium before, the Maduro regime is not the legitimate government of Venezuela. It is a narco-terror cartel. Maduro is not a legitimate president. He is a fugitive head of this drug cartel. He has been indicted in the United States for trafficking drugs into our country, and it is the utmost responsibility of this president and this administration to prevent the illicit flow of drugs into our country and to protect.
So Peyton, now we know what he's doing with the battleship off the coast of Venezuela. We've heard that the administration does not consider the Maduro regime a legitimate regime. Now, he's not talking about doing a regime change. What he is doing is enforcing our laws and heading off some of the guns, drugs, and other harmful things that come from that country that can get to America. Now, what did we hear from the previous mayors? We heard that if he was serious, he would deal with the gun issue. If he would deal with the drug issue, he would work with the mayors. He's heading off some of those drugs and guns at the pass. So now we understand what he's doing. Let's look at some of the things that he's done in regards to dealing with this crisis.
Suffice it to say that the president is going to be on offense against drug cartels and drug trafficking in the United States. It destabilizes not just the country, but the entire Caribbean basin. These particular drugs were probably headed to Trinidad or some other country in the Caribbean, at which point they just contribute to the instability these countries are facing. So the president's been very clear that he's going to use the full power of America and the full might of the United States to take on and eradicate these drug cartels, no matter where they're operating from and no matter how long they've been able to act with impunity. Those days are over. This is a counter-drug operation. We're going to take on drug cartels wherever they are and wherever they're operating against the interests of the United States. The president's top obligation is to secure the national interest and the national security of our people. I know of no president that means that more than this one, our president now, President Trump. And I'm not going to speculate about what might come down the road.
All right, Peyton, we know what came down the road because he struck a boat that had around 11 gangsters, drug cartel people in there, and they identified that they had drugs in the boat. So if you've seen the images, it's like a blip on the map. They were instantly obliterated, gone. So he's done that not just to have a demonstration of strength, but I think it is sending a clear message that it's not going to be tolerated. Because one of the things that Marco Rubio said was that it's destabilizing other countries that are contributing to our immigration problem. So now it's not just that we're protecting our country, but we're pushing back against this drug war that's happening in other countries that's destabilizing our own. So, what were your thoughts about the reasoning behind these operations?
Good job, Mr. President. That's it. That's all. Good job, Mr. President.
Absolutely. Peyton, we've seen that the president is not playing chess or checkers, he's playing Battleship. And he is not tolerating any attacks, whether they come from the cartel, whether they come from judges. Right now, they block some of the president's policies, but you can bet your bottom dollar that he's going to be in with his legal team getting those things reversed. We've also seen that Americans are pushing back and they're letting the world know that these policies are affecting them, that these policies around fraud are not fair to Americans. They're taking advantage of our system. Our tax dollars are being used to fund their lifestyle, and we're not going to take it. And I do think that people need to understand that if we're going to change this, we're going to have to change this through policy. It's great that Donald Trump, our president, has worked around the clock to sign all these executive orders and put all these things into place and demonstrate strength, but this could all be reversed and everything can be destroyed and opened up. And I don't want to see this progress go to waste. So we definitely need HR2, e-verify, federalize. I'll keep beating that drum. We need to pressure our elected officials. What are your final thoughts, Peyton?
Final thought, right before jumping on, I seen Numbers USA a grade card on X, on Twitter, on X. So I definitely need to go and look at my local officials, or not local, but elected officials, to see where they are. And I would just want to encourage the public, understanding what we need when it comes to legislation, let alone legislation surrounding immigration. It's not the easiest thing to do, but that's why I commend organizations like Numbers USA that's truly nonpartisan and that will grade our officials in a nonpartisan way on this specific issue. We do have, not we, but there are tools available for the public to actually do a little bit more easier research when it comes to your elected officials in comparison to just going on congress.gov. Those bills are very boring to read, but Numbers USA consolidated everything.
That is awesome. I appreciate you bringing that up because I just think that our tools make it easy because we'll show how people voted on immigration. And you can look at bills, you can look how they voted over time. You can see how some of these people that have been lifetime politicians, how they voted over the years. And Numbers USA has 6 great solutions. You should check them out. You should encourage your elected officials to vote for bills that fit within our 6 great solutions. And if anyone has a question, you can email me directly at abarnes@numbersusa, or you can go to numbersusa.com and learn more. Peyton, anything else?
One more thing.
Okay.
This is going to be a lot of work, but can you check to see if they're open to sending out questionnaires to upcoming candidates for the midterms? Because we have grade cards for incumbents, but there's a lot of candidates that's about to start the filing for Congress for the midterm. So let's see if we can get grade cards for candidates. I know they didn't get a chance to vote on actual legislation, but with a good questionnaire, we'll be able to vote a little bit easier.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
And that is something that we do. And I
Okay.
will definitely take those suggestions and take it to our leadership team because you're right. There are a lot of people running for office at the federal level, and we want to make sure that we highlight how they've been effective on immigration. We can definitely help with that and send out the questionnaires. And if there are some people that just decide they're not going to fill out the questionnaire, that's fine. We'll give them a
Yeah.
time frame and highlight everybody else that filled out the questionnaire.
Sounds good.
All right, fantastic. As Peyton always says, don't just take our word for it. Do your research. Look it up by yourself. Policies matter. And if we don't get the policies right, we're going to be in the same situation we were in another pendulum swing in that we saw in the last 4 years. So let's get the policy right. Let's get some long-term legislation, and we'll see you next week on Policy, Barnes, and Jackson. We're out.